Hello, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 18 of Off the Mark. I am your host, 2DO, and with me, as always, is my beautiful, bright, and sunny co-host, Miss Meeks Kali. How are you, my queen?
Hello, TD. So excited to be here for another cast. We
Yay,
at it
me
again.
too. At it again, number 18. Can you believe it?
Right? Oh my goodness.
Yep, an anniversary is afoot already. I'm ready to retire. I don't know about you.
Stuff
It's
keeps
been a
happening.
right. Exactly. If stuff just stops, then
Knock it off.
we'll be good. Anyway,
Mom can
so
take a
this
nap.
this yeah, right. If anything, at least a nap. So today's episode, we're going to bring you a very quick, it's probably going to be a long-winded update on the last 2 weeks of the Biden administration, which are the first 2 weeks of the Biden administration. We want to bring you an update on the Wall Street fiasco that happened a few weeks ago and how it ties into the Great Reset that's in our very near future. We want to bring you the latest breaking news, which is the AOC fiasco. I like that word. I'm gonna use it for everything. They got a lot of fiascos going on over there, man. And again, and there's tons on Biden that we're gonna get to as well. Quick update on Newsom and a quick update on our favorite person on this earth, Mr. Hunter Biden. I cannot wait to bring him up later. So that's just gonna just a quick intro as to what we're gonna do. And with that, I would like Ms. Meeth Kali, if you're ready to go, bring up some Wall Street stuff because as the great Jackie Mason would say, this is not my field, so I can't. I'm not completely clueless as far as the highlights are concerned and how it's going to take us into the future. But you got the notes, you got the stats. I'm all ready for you.
All right. So, as you may have heard, there was some scrummaging around on Wall Street this past week as there was some activity regarding GameStop that was quite unexpected and was costly. So essentially, folks that were using a Reddit platform called, oh my goodness, I'm like Wall Street Bets.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay, yeah, because I don't.
Got wind of some hedge funders planning a short squeeze on some certain stocks, such as GameStop and AMC, that they were expecting to fail. So they borrow against it at a lower rate of like $6 in this instance, anticipating that they're going to be able to sell it back at $10 and then keep that $4 profit. So instead, in the midst of their borrowing, folks on this Reddit platform all organized to purchase stock from GameStop. A lot of people just having gotten their stipend or stimulus, or their tax refunds, or well, I guess not yet, but and decided that this is what they were going to invest it in, and yeah, it drove up the price tremendously, so that instead of being able to sell for $10 or being able to buy back for $6 as expected, they ended up having to buy back for over $400, and now it's constantly toying with the demand because when they're having to borrow on more, then they owe more, and so then it's still driving the prices. So sorry, I'm fudging this a bit, but point being that the hedge funders lost billions, and this got a bunch of popularity and was reported on that, they were even using the Robinhood app, which of course Robin Hood's the character of, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. And so a lot of people were encouraging and promoting and applauding these people for basically sticking it to Wall Street, the little guy sticking it to the big guy. And that this was showing that, it's just another aspect of the rebellion, a show of change that, we're taking command. But in response to that, because, there's big effects of this. So all these hedge funders ended up losing billions of dollars, and it shows just how volatile our economy and market and the stock market is. And so a lot of them called for there to be some intervention or regulation to stop this from happening, because obviously once people caught wind of GameStop, then they were flooding to it, and they're concerned about, you know, this repeating on other stocks, and, you know, just having a trickle effect. So they wanted to kind of nip it in the bud. So Robinhood changed their functions on the app that you could sell your stock of GameStop, but you could no longer purchase it. So they were preventing people from, you know, basically free access to the stock market, which of course was in benefit for the hedge funders and not for the average person who may want to get involved in this sudden burst and boom of GameStop. So Robinhood obviously showed their hand of who they stand with by protecting the hedge funders. So they got a lot of backlash and criticism, and now are even, I believe, being tried in court for that action of preventing people from being able to do free trading on this platform that they're presenting themselves as being a free general access trader. And so, yeah,
I was
and
about
so
to ask if that's even legal. I understand that, you know, a private app can make up their own rules and do what they want to do, but on the other side of that, there's a thing called a free market, what we have considered to be a free market. So for them not to be able to repurchase or purchase, and, you know, after selling, that doesn't even sound legal. So yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. And by the way, I think you're explaining everything quite well.
I think, yeah, and there's some videos we could link to, or we'll post on our Facebook or other pages that will give a bit more of a breakdown. And we're going to be referencing some slides in a minute from some other channels that have a lot more information on this. But essentially, so then by seeing the hedge funders and Robinhoods and basically Wall Street's response and reaction to this, a lot of the Reddit people started a new page called Wall Street Silver, so that they said, oh, Wall Street wants to dance, well, let's dance, you know, like that, it's just begun. So they were targeting the silver market next. And so just as of 2-3 days ago, silver prices started shooting up. And let's see, I'll actually go ahead and pull up our share right now. Okay, and this kind of ties into later, but just to kind of put some food for thought as we're going through this. So the powers of financial capitalism, and this is a quote by Professor Carol Quigley, the powers of financial capitalism had another far-reaching aim, nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. So Wall Street Bets on Reddit decided that they were going to declare silver was next. So they post on the forum, and this caused a massive shortage as everybody was purchasing silver. Even the silver suppliers were at all-time like lows of their supply, and having to wait because they're getting a lot of their supply from the US Mint itself, you know, so they have only certain amounts that they can receive from them from at any given point. And so this is just showing how volatile the markets can be. And a lot of people were criticizing those, you know, average Americans or whoever that were getting involved in this and stock exchange, that they're basically playing with fire and they don't know what they're doing, and there's like bigger consequences that they can't even foresee, and that they could lose everything. And a lot of these people that they've been interviewing have been saying, like, you've already taken everything from me. I've lost my job, I've lost my, you know, I've lost my business or whatever. So to put their life, like, you know, we're at that breaking point where maybe they're not putting their life on the line, but they're willing to put their life savings on the line, and they don't care if they lose it in the end. So a lot of people are in GameStop have sold and have made a tremendous profit from that. So there were some reports of like a mother who bought her son for his like 7th birthday or something, some shares of GameStop at $6, and was able to sell them at 400. And now he has like, you know, money for school or whatever. And so there's wonderful stories like that. But then there's also people who are just holding their guns and they're not wanting to sell because they're wanting to force these hedge funders to pay out. So, you there's the backlash of like people should be able to do what they want with their money. The hedge funders are facing the same risks that they're trying to protect and prevent everyone from. Elizabeth Warren was one of the folks that really came out in defense of the hedge funders and saying that this is just evidence that we need more regulations on Wall Street. Meanwhile, the general consensus, like in a lot of the platforms or on news networks and stuff, was promoting or supporting, the little guy that, and criticizing Robinhood, the app, for preventing or interfering with the trading. So like we mentioned on our last episode, there was even a post where it shows that AOC and Donald Trump Jr. were agreeing in support of, these Reddit bettors. So this is pointing to the hidden enemy in our economy, and that inflation is stealing our purchasing power. So this isn't the only instance where silver prices have been driven up artificially, and that government has had to step in and do some regulation with it. So the Hunt brothers were these very wealthy traders who cornered the market, that they basically bought up all the silver, driving up the demand for it, and they owned it, so it drove up the price. And they had started buying silver in 1973 at $3 a share. And they're playing basically into future markets, which is a thing where a future market is an auction market which participants buy and sell commodity and future contracts for delivery on a specified future date. So the futures are exchange traded, derivative contracts that lock in future delivery of a commodity or security at a price set today. So some of the instances with that are with silver can be the hard metal material silver that you could have in like coins or bars in your possession. And then they also have paper silver, where you can just have like a certificate of ownership of silver that's actually held at the bank or so. But the complications with that is that, of course, the bank is trading, the wealth that they have on hand in order to create all these interest and profits. Meanwhile, so your money's at work even when it's just being held in savings. And so if there was a crisis that called everybody to suddenly want to recall the silver that they own by their paper assets, if they don't really have it in hand, then if the bank runs out, the bank runs out. And even if you technically own it, it's not there for you to claim.
Right.
So so again, pointing to these volatilities, here's a report from how the Holtz empire brings turmoil to Wall Street as the silvers plunge. And so this is them in court where they had to represent themselves and, basically get their slap on the wrist that you can't do that. And so they're basically manipulating the law of supply and demand. And that is where the issues come with privatization of all these regulations. Generally mean a more privatized hold on things that we're basically electing these people to protect us from ourselves, and that in their private hands, that it'll be distributed in a reasonable fashion, because they've discovered that there's kind of the tragedy of the commons, that in a perfect utopian society, one would think that Earth is naturally abundant, like a single seed can grow a tree that then produces many fruits. A stream is constantly, cleaning itself and should be able to constantly provide water. But if there was no sense of regulation, I guess, on demand or supply, somebody could seemingly overfish a pond, and then there wouldn't be enough for the tribe. So there has to be some type of agreement within the community that there's only this much that you can take, so that way it's a fair grip for everybody. So that's some of the challenges that they find with just a general zero regulation commons. So they use that as an excuse of being able to implement these issues with supply and demand. So basically the Hunt brothers did the same thing, where they did a short squeeze on silver. And the short squeeze, again, is the same thing that the hedge funders were doing on GameStop, where they're trying to, the Hunts brought in more buyers, the prices climbed, and the squeeze was in. The shorts caused more prices to climb, and there was a 700% jump. So what was $6 in 1979 jumped to $49 in 1980. And
Holy
so
crap.
they made $5 billion in positions, or had 2/3 of the market. And, again, this is in the 80s of having
Wow.
that kind of, and so in calls for inflation, obviously that's inflation is robbing our value, because you could have that same amount in the bank all these years later, but your purchasing power isn't as much. So in response to them, enter the government, and Tiffany's even took out an ad condemning the Hunts for how unfair and all that it was unconscionable for anyone to hoard several billion, yes, $1 billion worth of silver, and thus drive the price up. So government took notice, they changed the rules, and basically the rug was pulled out from the Hunts. And they were wealthy enough that they were able to recover, and they turned out fine. So
I would imagine so.
but it was still
them.
a significant loss for in the scheme of things, and that increased the margin of requirements for purchasing silver. So this talks about a leverage down spiral, and to cover leverage, prices fail. So the Hunts were issued margin calls, and they had to sold silver to cover for more drops. And so as the price of their silver was devaluing, they had to sell it to recompensate for that money that they were losing. But then as they were selling off, then there was more in the general supply. So then it was worth less. And so it just continued to be a snowball effect of that. So the prices dropped 50% to $11 an ounce. So in the ballpark of what it was prior to them. So there's a famous Mark Twain quote that history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. So the silver market is different now, and the silver industry use is down from about 84% to about 50%, and investment in silver is way up. So silver differs from gold in that obviously precious metals is often a reported way to have more securities in the financial market, because the dollar can crash, industries and economies rise and fall, but silver and gold and precious metals, bless you, are consistent. And so but for gold is more often used in opulent things like crowns or ornate like statues or things like that have a one-time use, and then it's preserved in that fashion that it was constructed into. So there's not as much like gold coins and stuff like that are being circulated. But silver has a lot more industrial uses where it's used in machinery and those kinds of things. So there's more mining for it and more being brought out of the ground, whereas most gold is already above ground and in possession already. And so and also silver is also at this moment cheaper for the average person to purchase. So if you were to purchase silver now might not be the best time because the prices are higher in this moment, but generally speaking, silver is a fairly secure security to invest in. And so this talks about attacking the leverage, and that Reddit basically exposed the leverage of our physical market. And there's a global silver exchange trading versus the mining supply. So there's constantly this balance of the silver that's in possession, the silver that's in circulation, that's being bought and sold currently, the silver that's being siphoned off for industrial use, and then the silver that's still assumed to be in the ground and could be mined at a certain rate. And so they have to be able to balance and all that. So there was an unprecedented silver demand, forcing billions deals to stop, taking orders before the markets open. So a lot of silver dealers such as JM Bullion and APMEX and SD Bullion, money metals were all basically sold out or at very low inventories. So again, encouraging that there's a need now for government intervention and regulation, just like before with the Hunts. So just to show that there's, although of course we want to encourage and support the little guy, we the people, defeating the empire or the oppressors, of course, but just as everybody's kind of trying to position themselves throughout this financial fluctuation, as you were debating maybe whether to get in on GameStop or another stock, or, it's just drawing attention to stocks in general, and more people are, interested in understanding that whole market and language and getting involved and engaged with it. So, but the silver squeeze, just like the Hunt brothers, is a catalyst, and a lot of masses are waking up to the manipulation, and there's an intention on inflation and what the end game is here. So obviously we can't just continue inflating off into eternity. We're a bubble that is bound to burst. I'm taking these screens from a YouTube channel by Mark Moss, and he does a lot of wonderful videos on the financial markets and just, how to position yourself. Because if you are having financial freedom, then it allows for more freedom in, a multitude of other ways. So of course, they say money is the root of all evil. So it's not the end all be all, but, money is currency. Our energy, our life force is currency that we're constantly changing and exchanging for money. So to be mindful of that and how it relates to our own bank of energy is relevant. So especially as we're moving forward, that basically we are at the end of a long road that a lot of nations have a reiteration of them in 250 years. So of course, with America, 1776, like we're almost due, we're at the precipice of that, of having, that change of guard. The Romans, rose and fell in 250 years. So we're in a lot of ways repeating that and their habits and their destruction. And, in the end, it said that part of what drove the Romans mad was they had so much lead materials that they were like laced with lead, and that they were basically getting lead poisoning that made it so that they were not as mentally sound. And it's interesting that even now we're at this stage of America's history that we're going through this phase of double masking. And, when it's reported that oxygen deprivation negatively impacts cognitive function. So that we're kind of funneling ourselves into this same kind of not dementia, but like
it's a slow type of brain damage.
Brain damage, yeah.
Yeah. If you lose oxygen for a long enough period of time, you develop brain damage.
Right.
No, not to suggest we're walking around getting, damaged brain, as someone would put it. But yeah, I mean, oxygen deprivation there's no way in hell that could be a positive thing. And by the way, the double masking thing, he went back and forth on it. It's either we do it or we don't. And he's flip-flopped on it in the last, I don't know, 72 hours even. I mean, make up your mind. What are we supposed to do? And you know why they flip-flop is because there is no truth behind the reasons for what they're saying. Otherwise, why are they, as we brought in the last episode, they're hiding the science from us behind the droplets and the masks. And if you ask me if this virus is as deadly as they say, these masks aren't going to work. Putting two isn't going to do anything for you except, maybe lead you to a quicker passing out phase.
Right.
There's no way. And I see people when I go hiking, they're doing gardening or they're hiking right along with me, but they have masks on their face, right, and their mask is going in and out on their face. Like, dude, just take it off so you can breathe. It's insane. It suffocates me, and it's not even on my face. I don't understand it.
Yeah,
it hurts. It hurts my heart to see, to be honest. You know what I mean? It all ties in this Wall Street thing and the double masking and the fact that we're in this state of confusion all goes back to the idea of Biden's beautiful administration slogan of Build Back Better, also known as the Great Reset.
Right.
The new normal.
And even Robert Klaus, the author of the COVID-19 Great Reset book that we shared on a previous episode, he keeps mentioning how like a cyber attack is our next failing, and like they've been prepping us for this digital currency. And we'll talk another episode more about the Great Reset again and the World Economic Forum and their lovely ads and commercials and how they're really pushing the slogan of you'll own nothing and you'll be happy about it, basically.
Yeah, that's really that's literally their slogan.
Yeah.
You'll own nothing and you'll like it.
Yeah.
That's what the hell do you mean by that? I mean, if you go deep into it, you can probably understand where they're coming from with it. But that's not how America works. That's a Russian slogan.
Right.
You'll nothing, you'll like it.
You
know what I
like
mean?
it.
That's how I read it. If I'm being honest, I didn't read it in plain English. I didn't. That's insane. What an insane thing to think of. You'll
Right.
own
And
nothing
you know,
and you'll like it.
there's that, you know, sustainability. Those are those like key words that they do to latch in, just like peace and free, you know, it's like war is peace, those 1984 kind of like double speak. So they're saying sustainability, and they say you own nothing because it seems like, oh, climate change, we have to act now. Or, you know, so like we have, oh, this consumerism, it's you guys for buying all that, not us for producing it and advertising it and blah, blah, blah. But you know, like making entire industries, are like life culture is about purchasing. But you know, it's all that consumption that's ruining the world, and we can't be trusted with purchasing. So they'll just, you know, confiscate everything from us, make sure that we have our essentials on hand, and then everything else you need, because you don't need a blender in your house if you're only using it once a week. Come on. So just borrow it, rent it out, you'll get permission, we'll know when you're using the blender and give it to you. But like, you know, we'll fine you or something, or knock your if it seems like it's been damaged or whatever, and then you'll return it to us and it'll be shared with the collective, and then you can rent out your next essential item. You know, even clothes, who needs that many clothes? A wardrobe takes up so much space in your house, who needs that? Right? So like, you know, it's mindful in to an extent of thinking, yeah, minimalist. Do I really need another $300 Coach purse? Probably not. So, you know, there is that aspect to it. Fast fashion is, you know, destructive in so many ways, but to go to this extreme, and when you can see this end post, that this is their end game, Agenda 2030, they're being blatant with it. The Great Reset like has a website, you know, like just look at the World Economic Forum's website, and they'll bullet point everything that they have planned out for us. Like, this isn't a conspiracy theory. Like, this is very powerful world organizations that have influence over the habits of nations, getting to dictate where this is going to go. They're telling us, you know. So and you know, like, there's a famous Rothschild quote of like, I care not who leads your countries as long as you give me control of the money. So they're basically setting us up with this problem reaction solution of, we're going to have cyber attacks, we're not secure, so we need better, more integrated, more secure systems. So they already are trying to combat cyber attacks and whatever with having more invasive security measures, like scan your fingerprint, let me do an eye scan, facial recognition, so we can make sure it's you on your phone, or we'll just get the chip and then you can just slide that under the little scanner at the grocery store, and then you won't have to worry about a cyber attack of somebody like stealing your chip card, your credit card number thing. And especially with all this, a lot of people that were on unemployment with the EDD had issues with their Bank of America cards having fraud reports on it, and have been caught up in that whole mix of not being able to get their employment funds because that was hacked or compromised, and however people were able to get that many card numbers. So, you know, they're showing these vulnerabilities at the same time that they were making us reliant on handouts and government, you know, allotments or provisions. And
the carrot on the stick that we never received.
Right. And so it's, you know, it's not a conspiracy theory to say that this is kind of where things are headed. If there's like commercials and like signs posts and arrows like signaling that this is the problem, this is behind us, this is where we're headed. And so now it is our chance to decide where to position ourselves in that. So now kind of it's like this hot potato game of, is the bubble going to crash before the Great Reset that they have us already caught into this new net? And basically people that get the vaccine and are on board with all these new practices are going to be more prepared and accepted into that new system. And then there's going to be people that resisted or waited and gets caught somewhere in between when the bubble pops. If you had too much cash on hand and you hadn't switched over to cryptocurrency or Bitcoin or whatever they have prepared for us on the other side, or if you didn't otherwise have yourself prepared with more sustainable metals that will outlive Bitcoin and whatever else comes to be. So we want to touch on just being prepared in the event of a crash, because it's not so much a if, but a when. And so this is in reference to the Federal Reserve and the 12 Federal Reserve districts, and how this relates to even like if you look at FEMA camp maps of their territories and stuff, how those kind of correlate. The European Union, and they've been wanting to have a Pacific Union as well, which COVID has really prepared us for. And as we'll talk later in the cast of some of the policies that Biden's implementing are looking like they're really inching us towards. But so just to be mindful of our sectors.
This map is very Hunger Games.
Right?
Dude, we're in District 12.
Right? Represent. Okay. So here's a wonderful interview. His name is escaping me at the moment, so comment below if you to correct us, please.
He looks like a Bill.
It looks like a Bill. But
Bill Davis.
Let's go with that. Clearly a Bill Davis.
Yeah, well.
100%. Wait, take off the glasses. So he describes in this lecture, and maybe we'll put a link to it on our YouTube channel, like in our playlist of some other videos that we recommend that you investigate. So in this talk, he shares the 4 steps to destroying America that you may see that we're kind of in the process of. So the first step is 15 to 20 years of demoralization. So if you reflect back on the past 15 to 20 years and how just in our lifetime, how much things have changed, especially with this influx of technology being such a cornerstone of our culture. But even thinking back to the American dream in the 50s, are kind of like the ideals of America, you know, the house and the 2.5 kids and the car and the job and the, you know, retirement and, you know, the one spouse for, you know, for life and till death do us part and all that kind of stuff, that those morals have been gradually chipped away at. And, you know, again, like, love is love. Like, we are people, we should be on the same team and accepting and supporting everybody wherever they are at in their journey, and for everybody to, you know, live their purpose in life, however that expresses itself. So no shade towards anybody, but at the same time, we've come miles from there since, you know, from that American dream, you know, that the feminist movement and women wanting to have an equal place in the workplace and things like that, and trying to make equal amounts as men. And of course, that makes sense that if there's work being done, that like dollar for dollar, that a gender shouldn't dictate how the value of your labor. But at the same time, the way that has, you know, encouraged that there has to now be 2-income households as a standard, instead of having the standard be that there be a parent at home that's able to raise and rear the children. And
I didn't
also
even
more
think of that aspect of it.
Yeah, and the more encouragement for women to, you know, like follow their career first.
Yeah.
So if you do happen, you're not like looking necessarily to get tied down and married as soon, even if you are having relationships. So the likelihood of, you know, unwanted pregnancies and potential abortions and all of those things come about from this encouragement of women in a different role. And not to say that in and of itself is bad, whatever like God put in your soul to bring out into the world, and maybe you're not in a position to raise a family alongside that. So not to say that you have to be a wife and mother in order to express your purpose as a woman, but the value of that role has been demeaned, that like, oh, you're just kind of brushed aside, that was like the most that you could do, or if like if you didn't succeed in all these other ways, all you could make yourself was a wife and mother, I guess.
And even sadly, more single mothers are garbage. Bottom of the barrel.
Bottom of the barrel. A problem with society. All those children being raised from those households of those single parents, and our society is such that it's supporting and enabling fathers to leave all these single mothers, you know? So like the accountability isn't there, that even like the culture among women, there's a lot more women that are having relationships with married men nowadays than, and just like, it doesn't have the shame and stigma that it used to. It's just like, I don't know. It's bizarre. So this demoralization has been under the works, and it's been chipping away at us for the last 15 and 20 years. And just look back at what was acceptable.
It's commonplace. And I think, and I don't want to be one of those people, because those people are jerks to me, but I think reality TV does have a lot to do with it. Everybody's cheating on reality TV.
Yeah.
And hitting
The
each
Bachelor,
other.
like, what is that?
Yeah.
All those women caddying and
it's very
fighting for the
common
same guy.
to watch a reality show where a woman slaps a man for cheating. That's not okay. Domestic violence is on the rise. You know, like I said, cheating, everything's a joke. Relationships are a joke. Marriages are a joke. It's easier to get a divorce than to work things out.
Right. And then they've been even reporting on that. Oh, sorry. But they've been reporting on that too, that because of COVID and the lockdowns and people being stuck with their spouse, stuck with their spouse longer, that there's an incredible boom in marriages going belly up, as they say, and that the divorce is like astronomical, the amounts of divorce that we're getting right now, and that they've been making it so that because of COVID and safety measures, that only like essential, really complicated cases need to meet in person in court, but that most of them can even just do it from the comfort of their own home via Zoom to divorce their, like, what are they in the other room, or but you stay on that side. But yeah, that they're making it that easy to dissolve an estate, over a simple couple signatures at a Zoom call. So just to keep mind of the integrity of the family and kind of where they're going. If you look at the 17 global goals and how they talk about distribution of housing and things like that, like they don't want single family households anymore. That's converse to, or for families to be interconnected. They want like pods, like the Matrix, or multiple, like, kind of, like like ghettos, like the, from Nazi Germany type, where there's, sects of people.
Yeah.
And so the next step is 2 to 5 years of destabilization. So basically making all these rulings that are contrast, or like basically the fabric of what it is that has made America have the integrity to last this long. That's where they're poking the holes at. So of course, like our amendments, First Amendment, Second Amendment.
I have a question.
Yes.
This destabilization of 2 to 5 years. So the 15 to 20 years, I see the history in there, the destabilization. I want to say, I think 9/11 had a lot to do with this, because this is where a literal crash happened, where America suddenly in a literal instant felt unsafe.
Right.
Just out of nowhere. Now America isn't safe. And it did take it took Bush's, I think he was there for 2 terms, and it did take about 2 to 5 years for us to actually accept everything that happened after 9/11, including the war, including the fact that he lied about the weapons of mass destruction. And he never even, I don't even think he even went up for impeachment for that lie. I don't remember. He might have. But yeah, I think it took a good chunk of years. That's an amazing timeline, because that's how I feel the timeline was for us to finally get used to having to take off our shoes at the airport, all the surveillance cameras that are out on the streets that they eventually took away in some states because they were deemed unconstitutional. But yeah, this timeline just gave me the chills so far. So I'm sorry, I had to bring that up, but carry on.
No, yeah, and that's a wonderful point, that it is like, this isn't just like, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2 3, 4. And then like the 1 is kind of like in its own cycle as well.
We see it happening. That's what's insane about it.
Yeah. So we had the destabilization even leading up to 9/11 of, there was already criticisms of us being at war in the middle, tensions in the Middle East, and concerns about guns back then, and free speech, as we were having the internet.
Very true. So, we did have Columbine, and we did have a few mass shootings before that too. Yeah.
Right. So
we've been shaken.
So they had the Patriot Act already to respond to as the destabilization came, and then the crises of 9/11 happened. They already had this normalization prepared to respond to all the destabilization and stuff that had happened. And then the normalization can just go on indefinitely, essentially. So we're still in the normalization of 9/11. We're still taking off our shoes well, I guess not now because of COVID, but taking our shoes off. But yeah, so now we're in a new wave. Like you said, we had it with Bush. We had a different phase and wave of destabilization with Obama. We had a different version of it with Trump, even in reverse or contrast to the direction that they were going. So you could even say that perhaps the reason why we haven't gone straight on this timeline down is because of the monkey wrench of that Trump threw in there, that he wasn't like whatever part he plays in the whole story of it, he didn't go according to their specific plan. We branched off a little bit and did like a little side story.
Slowed it down. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we're cycling back through the destabilization, and that's evident in, I don't even know how many executive orders Biden is up to now. He had like 40 as of a couple days ago. But yes, and so it primes us for crisis and then normalization. So there's this wonderful quote by John Maynard Keynes. Lenin was certainly right. There is no subtler, no surer means of overturning the existing basis of society than to debauch the currency. The process engages all the hidden forces of economic law on the side of destruction, and does it in a manner which not one man in a million is able to diagnose. So on the surface with GameStop, it might seem like, oh, the little guy like made a play against the empire smacked back, and now it's gonna restabilize itself. But no, it's encouraging and basically demanding more economic law, more hidden forces to regulate all these aspects that allow us to circulate the energy and exchange it with amongst ourselves. So these are some great slides. There's a channel on YouTube called The Greatest Truth Never Told that really describes in great detail our financial circumstance. There's one video in particular called Silver Shield that's over 8 hours long. So it's an investment. You can watch it in parts if you have to. There's a lot of great spots for screenshots. So here's a couple of screenshots from that video, but things to be mindful of as we're moving into, again, this dollar collapse, that it's not an if, but a when, and that the powers that be, World Economic Forum, are preparing for it. And it's just a matter of whether you're on their side, on independently self-reliant, or caught in the middle. So this is the top 5 places not to be during the dollar collapse. The first one they mentioned is Israel, because the United States will have too much on their plate domestically and internationally to worry about this a non-strategic piece of land, since it's not part of the home continental United States. That there is a lot of funding even through the course of COVID that has been going to Israel, and there's been criticisms of that. And so yeah, in the event of an emergency, that Israel would definitely be impacted if the United States is implicated, not able to provide that same support. The next place is Southern California, of course, with especially in like LA, 20 million people packed into an area with no food or water, along with huge wealth and racial differences, will tip this area into massive unrest. So we've already seen implications of this from the BLM and Antifa riots. We obviously in Southern California don't have the same advantage of having guards and land, and a lot of people couldn't even garden if they wanted to. There just isn't the space for it. So, and just the way that the cities are organized and structured makes it so that getting out of the city, evacuating, is complex, or being able to get to different stores, that if your local grocery store is out, being able to get across town to the next one could prove challenging. So yeah.
Is that guy shopping or stealing?
Both.
I mean,
he left money on the counter, I'm sure.
He looks busy, but what is that? It looks like boxes of meat patties or something. I don't know. Boxes of top ramen. Essentials. There's either way. Hey man, if you need it, you need it.
So another example, to no surprise, is London. So with the collapse of the Anglo-American Empire, the British subjects will come face to face with the reality that they are living in a 1984 nightmare. So London is one of the most surveillanced places on the earth. So a lot of this push towards the Great Reset, like as we've mentioned before, that New York and California have gotten a lot of attention through this whole COVID, and that we've been the guinea pigs and examples. Australia too. London has been another one where they've been using this excuse to do even more and more draconian measures. So they've had like officers patrolling, going like door to door and asking people where they've been, and like those kinds of levels of contact tracing, or reminding them to get tested, or just really invasive.
They've used London a lot, and as for a lot of examples, they've had a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of terrorist attacks and a lot of trauma happen just in the city of London alone. So yeah, bummer.
Bummer. And number 4 is New York City. So of course, New York. So a collapse of Wall Street would have devastating consequences on the surrounding area. Those that once lived high on the hog suddenly wonder where their next meal is coming from. So again, I think part of what this experience with GameStop is that the Great Reset, as they say in their commercial, there's a role for everyone. So no one will be immune to this transition and your initiation into the Great Reset. So anyone who thinks that, well, my job wasn't affected, I'm essential, or well, like I have all this in savings and my hedge, or my stocks or whatever, they're sending a clear message that everyone can have everything wiped from them, and that like you're only coming into that, you're only going to have anything through us.
Right.
Is their messaging. So of course, New York, similar to LA and California, being very concentrated, lots of people, not as much farmland, especially in the city, for people to have any way of producing their own food if there were shortages and it weren't available in the markets. And then, just piggybacking off that, essentially any major city where there's too many people that are totally dependent upon the highly complex systems that the dollar enables will be left completely unprepared for this collapse. So desperate people do desperate things when food and fuel stop coming into dangerous areas. So it could get to a point where already they've had like truckers striking and stuff. And if there was civil unrest, then there might not be able to be the same circulation of shipments. And so you really would be reliant on just what is available in your local area. So a lot of these major cities where the people to land ratio is off, and that we don't have the assets immediately there at our disposal.
And just to add to that, in Long Beach alone, hashtag Fire Garcia, we have 2 markets this week alone, Ralph's and I believe in Albertsons. Huge deal in Long Beach because they're closing. They're closing because they're being forced to pay hero pay to their employees for being essential workers, but they can't afford it, and or are being greedy and refuse to pay it. So instead of paying it, their stores are closing down. These aren't the only 2 stores in this entire country that's happening to.
Right.
Major stores are closing everywhere, especially franchised ones. Right. So I mean, on top of these introductory closings and all these introductory shutdowns happening, where do you expect us to get our food? Well, there's not going to be very many places locally. Small shops are closing, big shops are closing. So all of this adds to the desperation that may come in the future. On top of that, this huge push, this huge trend for the cryptocurrency thing, I don't trust it. I never have. I don't trust for a second. I don't understand how all of my friends are diving into it as heavily as they are. They're making a buck. I can understand that. But what they don't see is the same thing as you said as the silver. If it's on paper, or even if it's on a digital screen, it can easily be taken away from you. Nobody sees that part. And that's what I don't understand. I want either cold hard cash, and when that becomes irrelevant, I want a giant bullion of silver, and maybe I'll be okay. Maybe I'll be okay.
Right.
That's where we're coming from. Anyway, I digress.
No, thank you for all that. Yeah, exactly. That people need to realize that real value is what you have in your hands. You can have, any number on your screen or paper or whatever, but if it's not really in your hands, in your possession, then you don't have it.
It's irrelevant.
So this goes further into 5 reasons why American riots will be the worst in the world. So when the dollar crashes, it will, of course, have implications globally. Other countries are already responding to this. China has been preparing for this and, persuading this for some time. And so in America in particular, we are extremely vulnerable just because our culture is such that, we're basically going to be blindsided by this, a great majority of people. So one reason. No. So one reason is our arrogance. So the American way of life is not negotiable as we continue to spread debt and death throughout the world, supporting our consumer consumption. We must dominate the world over in order to maintain this quality of life. So even as we're virtue signaling about our masks and you're going to kill grandma and stand 6 feet apart from me, like we've completely been out of sight, out of mind of the implications of how our consumerism, affects third world countries through the development of that, or how we have had wars that affect the economy and such, that we're able to have such cheap goods and services sent to us, to then pay our extra and profits on to send to these privatized companies. And so, yeah, basically our economic system is one of debt and death. The constant flux towards inflation is, and constantly creating debt. They charge money to print a dollar. So a dollar doesn't equal a dollar in the economy. Every dollar printed is deflating it and is causing a debt or a negative mark. And yeah. And yeah, as we've even noticed through the course of this year with COVID, a lot of people having, losing their jobs or what, that we are discovering, like what are we consider to be our essentials, and how many people are, canceling their Netflix and Hulu during this time compared to, so like we feel we've continued, even as, it's so dangerous that we shouldn't even be going outside, yet, all these fast food restaurants and that convenience have been considered essential. So yeah, our American way of life is one of convenience, and we don't always realize how opulent it is. We're used to being able to turn on our faucet, flip the light switch and have it, and our arrogance that we think that we're entitled to that because we're good people, and that that we're just going to trust that not everything's going to work out, that should be continue to be available to us.
The kitchen faucet one is one I always go to. Our apartment building has bad plumbing, so they're always turning off the water. So wow. I'll go hours, a day, not all the time, but when it happens, it happens, and then you forget. It's always there. You take it for granted, and I've frustrated myself on these days because I go to the kitchen, I want to wash a dish, I want to get whatever, but I don't know how many times I'm going in the kitchen, turning on the water, and you don't realize it till it's gone.
Until it doesn't. Yeah.
That's what's going to freak everybody out.
Yeah.
Because it freaks me out just a few hours knowing it's going to get turned back on. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, this sucks. All of a sudden I want to shower, or, whatever the deal is.
Yeah.
So it's, I fear for us as a country, because that's it's going to drive a lot of people nuts. That alone, not being able to turn on your kitchen faucet, not having gas in your house, not having electricity,
right?
Power grids going out. Those things alone are enough. We're too comfortable, and thank God we live in the greatest country in the world that we're able to have these things. You know what I mean? Just on hand like that. On the other side of it, arrogance, like you said. These slides are amazing. Like I've been getting chills on a lot of them.
This is a wonderful YouTube channel. Maybe we'll show it at the end. It's the main video that this was taken from is 8 hours long. It's very intensive, but it starts from the Sumerians and how the pharaohs or the priests manipulated the pharaohs with the eclipses, and just how it goes into like the Titanic and the Federal Reserve, and how the economies of different nations throughout history have gone through their cycles, and basically like we're, history doesn't repeat, it runs.
That story's in the movie 300, where the oracles basically scam what's his name? I forgot his name. The 300 guys scam him.
I forget the pharaoh.
They take all his money and basically tell him something that isn't true. They bullshit him.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Good movie.
Been a lot of reference to that. Okay. So another reason why there'll be riots in America is denial. So they believe in the American dream, and that we will somehow muddle through this. They think that our leaders have our best interest in mind, as our future is sold out from underneath us, and we are sacrificed in wars for oil. So there is this belief, and it's been very evident in this last election, that America has a government that's protecting us. And that's like the general consensus. And it's kind of, again, like with pro wrestling, how it was like a agreed upon lie that, that we're able to function and enjoy because of it. But yeah, even when the evidence is so contrary to that we're still putting our faith and trust in something that is hurting us, so or
Right.
gaslighting us.
It's a year later, and I still hear people saying, "I cannot wait to get back to normal." A year later,
Right.
I can't wait to get back to normal. What do you mean? What are
2
you
weeks
waiting
to
for?
stop the spread.
Right?
Yeah, denial. So, and the next is narcissism. So the mass manufacturing of selfish, shallow people will come to a head as the dollar paradigm ends, and then people will see what a waste their consumeristic lives have been. Unempathetic masses will feed upon themselves, trying to sustain the unsustainable. So this time of COVID, as we've all been driven to our devices and are communicating more on Zoom and stuff, a lot of people have been connecting on social media instead of in person, because that's been what's encouraged. And people are also using social media to, emotionally adjust. So their need to feel seen or relevant, or having, even a form of income through these social media platforms is forcing us to be very like individualistically minded in some sense, but yeah, that we're taking food selfies instead of being mindful of where our food comes from and where it's going to be the next day.
Wow, no kidding.
And trying to make sure that we get more likes instead of realizing how America's impacting the rest of the world and all of those kinds of things. So another one, 4, is drugs. So Americans turn to drugs to hide the hole in their lives. The debt, the poor relationships, and a declining lifestyle leads people to abuse alcohol, drugs, and antidepressants. Antidepressants can lead to psychological breaks from reality, resulting in suicide or murders. So we've discussed this as well. Even while all these businesses like gyms are getting closed for being non-essential, McDonald's and liquor stores and all of those, of course, are still open, and liquor sales are up, drug sales are up. A lot of people have been seeing therapists or are on antidepressants. There's been in a lot of places more suicides than COVID deaths, and yeah, the drugs have been a way for us to escape and make the American dream into, kind of that lucid one, or drug-induced self-coping mechanism type one, self-medicating.
On a more personal note, I myself am in therapy. I started a few months ago because of a lot of things that are happening. I saw myself admittedly drinking a lot more than I probably should be, because I had no responsibilities at some point. All my kids were staying home from school. COVID hit pretty hard. So it's not easy for people to recognize that that's what they're doing to themselves. Right. So we'll put that out there. So this isn't to judge anybody. This is why I put myself out there in the first place, because it's not about judging how you cope, but there are other ways to cope. And I encourage therapy, or even just reaching out to a friend or reaching out to somebody, because these only mask, and no pun intended, but they only mask the realities of things to come, and the realities of things that we tend to not be able to let go of. Yes, COVID was freaky. It was scary at first. It was thrown at all of us, and we all react in different ways. And most of us reacted in this way. And again, that's not to take away from anything or anybody, or call anybody out as a bad parent. I myself do not consider myself to be a bad parent, but I did have to recognize my actions. And at some point, we all have to recognize our actions and take accountability simply, whether it be for our own healthy body, mind, and soul, or for the future of our own children. Either way, there's no lose-lose in this situation. So yeah, I encourage anybody who's dealing with struggling with any type of substance abuse to please reach out, DM one of us if you need to. I have personal experience with the situation. So on a personal level, if you need to reach out to anybody, we're here. So yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing all that. Yeah, absolutely no judgment. We're all in this boat together, and everybody's just coping however they can. And there's no judgment to say that one way is better than another. Everybody's just doing what they can for their self-preservation. So, but of course, we can always improve on that. So, there's no shame in hitting rock bottom, only in allowing yourself to stay there, or getting stuck anywhere along wherever we plateau. You could be constantly climbing up and you still don't want to plateau. Like we are capable of more, so we can, but we need help. So no man is an island either.
Right.
And so the fifth one is violence. So society desensitized antisocial behavior only serves to encourage it. With the collapse of the dollar, this will give free rein to the most aggressive sociopaths as they try to maintain their constant high of instant gratification. So we've seen this just when they had the George Floyd riots, and they gave the curfews, and there was like a go ahead to basically to whoever does want to go out and vandal the streets, that now's your chance. We had our purge time, and that will happen again if the dollar collapses and people feel like that the police are going to be overwhelmed, that there's not the same repercussions, and that it's Mad Max, every person for themselves, that you'll want to be prepared for that. And so be mindful of your protection, of fortifying your home, your base, so that you can bunker in whatever ways of security that you can. Obviously, the cities and highly populated areas are going to be the most vulnerable to this. And let's see if I have anything else now. And so I guess where we want to leave that is, as if and when the dollar collapses, that people will quickly discover that the only reality is their real relationships, their real skills, and their real assets. Everything else is going to evaporate. So you can have 1 million followers on Instagram or YouTube, but if the grid goes down and you don't have contact with those, all you have are the people that your people in your house, your neighbors in your immediate area. What are your relationships with those people? Some people feel at war in their own house, especially with all these divorces, like we said. So this is the time to, put pettiness aside. There's a reason why in a lot of other cultures that they're mindful to make sure that they have multi-generations of a family, or different parts of the family in the same household, or at least, being neighbors on the same street or same city, because when SHTF, that you can band together, and that those are the people that you're going to be able to rely on, and start having those, and obviously not everybody comes necessarily from a supportive family, but whoever you do make those connections to be mindful of our relationships, that's what's real, and our real skill. So, it's great to learn coding and all these digital things, and to be able to keep up on these platforms, because that is, where the world is going in a great sense. We do have this digital and technological boom. There is this push towards a technocracy, but at the end of the day, if the grids were to shut down, or if you were isolated just within your immediate area, can you mend clothes? Can you grow food? Can you repair relationships? Can you figure out plumbing or ways to get water or fix a car, or those kinds of things? So we need to be mindful of what our skill set is, and being able to prepare for those now, like practice gardening now when it's not the only food that you're going to eat. So that way, if ever it was, you're ready. But practice it now. Practice canning now. Practice sewing and crocheting and mending, all the things that are truly, truly essentials for our lives. We've had this list of, these are the essential workers, these are the essential businesses, like Amazon, you need to stay afloat. But yeah, to really realize that if the lights were to go out, if the curtain was to fall, what is real life, and what are your real assets? Not how much you have in the bank, not how much even cash that you have, because there's examples of after World War I, when Germany had their economy was in so much flux that they had to have barrels worth of dollar bills just to buy a loaf of bread, so that deflation can make it so that even the cash that you're storing can be worthless if the balloon crashes. So that's why silver, precious metals, other assets and securities, having tools, having resources that you can trade, like candles or food or things like that, seeds, are also real assets. So being mindful of that. And yeah, we just wanted to put that into context of this GameStop event that happened these 2 weeks, and just to kind of see, I think a lot of times when these type of events occur, that it's easy for people to kind of take a back seat and realize oh, the good guys are at work, things are happening changes occurring, and just to have a reminder that the revolution won't be televised. So if you're having AOC and Donald Trump Jr. agreeing that this is a good thing, or, like just sit with that and see, who's positioned where and how they're benefiting from what, and don't just take the action at face value or the event at face value, but think of the implications from it. And, as expected, now the Federal Reserve is having to step in, or the government's having to step in with this GameStop event. So it's going to result in more regulations, which is going to impair potentially our ability to work with the market or purchase silver. So that was one of the most reliable assets for us that's now going to have more restrictions and access limited to it. So, being able to have that forethought, they have this Agenda 2030. So you could assume that we'll be like past the point of no return at that time, or like fully locked into this like prison planet digital system by then, according to their timeline and goal. So in a sense, it can make us think that we have 9 years, I guess, to get towards that. But I mean, like, look where we are at now, that you can't go into a grocery store without a mask. So it also could be 6 months from now that they demand that you can't go shopping without your vaccine, and that the remaining 8 years is just the transition of, I don't know, sweeping up all the leftover people that are falling through the cracks, to figure out where to sort all of those people. So, the crash could happen tomorrow, as the GameStop thing, made evident. Like, people were worried about what was going to happen. That's what part of the reason why silver even drove up, aside from Reddit. So it could happen tomorrow, it could happen years from now, but either way, just knowing that it is going to happen, and to prepare yourself, and just having that be part of the culture, of having that be part of the American dream of preparedness, of sustainability, of defending this great nation. They say that, I think Thomas Jefferson maybe has a quote about how like the first generation like fights for liberty, and then the second generation is like too comforted by it that they don't defend it, and then it gets challenged and taken away for the third generation to then have to fight and defend for again. So we're kind of like in this lull where we're accustomed to our freedoms and liberties, and now Biden's in office, so he's got us back on track, and he's going to make sure that everything is taken care of, and we're building back better, and
everyone seems to be sitting poolside now. I mean, but that being said, his approval ratings at an all-time low at 49% right now. So who knows? I mean,
the most voted for president.
The most voted for president. Yeah, he's at an approval rating of 49%. Who would have thought? Interesting.
After 2 weeks, that now he's finally gotten in there and been able to do his work, and now the gloves are off, and he's not being held back anymore. Like this went down. Yeah. And it's evident from his initial executive orders that, like, if the concern was really like America and building back and like finding our vulnerabilities one way or another have been pointed to from either side. So like having legislation that directly affects those. But even with the vaccine, people are saying that like, oh, COVID's better now that Biden's in office, even though the numbers are still going up. People aren't able to get to the vaccine, and there's even doses that are being thrown out because they're spoiling too soon before it's even able to get implemented. So the people who want it aren't having the access. And then a lot of his other policies have nothing to do with COVID, have nothing to do directly with the American people, like with the Keystone pipeline. People might think, oh, he's like tackling climate change. That's a really big issue, but the oil is still being shared. It's not like it stopped getting drilled. It's just that now, instead of going on a pipeline, it has to be like trucked over, and has more
like above ground now.
Yeah, it has to be taken above ground, where it's even more likely for there to be spills, and it changes more hands, which means it's more costly. And again, not to say that we should be like, there's chance for spill, and it could have horrific implications on the environment through a pipeline too. So yes, we need other energy sources, but they're saying in like 2 to 3 years, we hope to have these new systems of energy in place, and that those people will be able to get jobs there. Like, if you can build a pipeline, you can learn coding. They've said really dismissive types of comments like that to these people, when it's a completely different industry. And it's not like that they're just going to walk into a coding office the next day. Like, there's a transition period that hasn't been allotted for these people. So, and especially in a time where they're talking about the stimulus and people being unemployed to lay off a bunch of people. So it's just evident that Biden has been very active as president. He's been making a ton of executive orders, but
he's going the wrong way.
Whoever is like being, benefited by these executive orders is evident, and it's building money for some people.
Right. I always wonder when I see his quotes or when I see him talking, I put Trump's voice onto it, and I always wonder the outrage that would happen at the things that Biden has said. If you don't vote for me, then you ain't black. I can't imagine.
Oh my God, imagine
saying that.
Imagine.
You can learn to code. Come on, give me a break. You can learn to code. I can't imagine that coming out of his. And he has said things that were just as Fringe, jerky. Maybe not as maybe even just as unsensitive. But I just going back and thinking, hearing that out of his voice, the outrage that would happen right now, that is just crickets. There's just absolute crickets right now. That's so
hypocrisy. Wow.
It's hypocrisy, but he's so tone deaf.
Right.
That entire administration, their elitism is just ridiculous. Last thing on Wall Street, and then we can wrap it up. The other things that we want to talk about, I think we're going to break it into other episodes. We're ready to go on that stuff as well. But the Wall Street one was a very informative and very long, so we want to keep you guys too much longer. But I have a question. Let me ask you something. Right.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Let's get down to brass tacks.
Right. So the predictability of the bubble bursting. Do you think that's going to be enough for either us to, like you said, or as we saw on the slides, have complete chaos come about, or will that be the excuse for then the administration to be like, okay, no, calm down, everybody. We have your checks. They're ready to go. We're going to send them to you. And that's going to be the start of the new normal.
Yeah, I think that right now they're in that like transition phase, like Indiana Jones with the gold, and he had to put the weight on and take the thing. So they're trying to do like that switch on us, and the economy is very volatile. So they can't do a full push into the digital thing because people don't trust it. We're not ready. Right. But the economy's ready. So we need to get ready. It's kind of like this birth is happening and the contractions are happening, and like, you got to get on board, like you don't have till your due date. So they're trying to get us prepared. And that's why, COVID's been so convenient, that there are already so many people that are on unemployment that are just getting their, they want a universal income, so that people just used to getting their digital thing in their digital account. You have, maybe you're like got certain point system. I don't know how they're going to do it necessarily, because it doesn't necessarily have to be like dollar per dollar, but that certain goods are worth certain points, and that you're going to figure out your rations that way, or however they're going to work it into with all the other benefit systems that they have through welfare and things like that.
Well, I can tell you this, what you're explaining is WIC, the welfare or Women, Infant, and Children program. That's what you're explaining. Yeah. As you get a certain amount of coupons or a certain amount of this and that. And it gives you 4 milks a month and 3 cereals a month. Yeah, that's what you're explaining. I didn't even think about it that way, but that's what WIC is. It's rations.
It's also communism.
But it's also that. Yeah, no kidding.
But think good, like how many women has that helped though? Thank goodness yeah.
Well, and it's the only program. It's so funny you mentioned that it's an active, or that it's communism, because it's the only program available to everybody, not just low income people. WIC is a program available to all Americans.
Wow.
And I didn't
realize that part. Yeah.
I don't even think you have to be American or documented. I'm not positive on that end, but I don't think you do. I think it's really literally available to anybody that comes and has a baby under 5 years old, for sure. Yeah. I didn't even think about that though.
Yeah. And that's, again, it's a tricky edged sword, because, you don't want for mothers wherever they came from to be like starving with their child on the street. Absurd. Like, obviously there should be a community should come together to make sure that those people, women and children first, are taken care of. But also you can see how there's been these push towards these policies in these last couple of weeks that are so adverse to, America first. Like, we're the opposite of that now, of the integrity of an American. Like, I understand wanting to support people, and especially if there have been caravans of people that are taken over here and are, escaping from their country. But there has to be some type of accountability to the collective in that. So if somebody's, coming to America and is siphoning it out to other places or doesn't have the same allegiance to America, then it's going to just poke holes in the boat for everybody.
Right.
And that doesn't help anybody either.
Very well said. Very well said. Right. I believe it costs us $1.16 billion a year to support anybody who's illegal and or undocumented. So $1.16 billion, billions of American dollars that we work for. And as you said, you put your physical, your mental, your emotional energy into your job, and in exchange for that, you get paid. And what the government is doing is it's stealing that from you. So essentially, when you wake up in the mornings, whether you wake up in a good mood or a bad mood, they're stealing that from you.
Right.
So I mean, it's a beautiful thing to bring up because it's the absolute truth, and maybe it'll help. If anything, going to work, it'll encourage me to even focus on being in a better mood as I go in, because that'll make my dollar stretch even more, if you ask me.
Right. That's
so
true.
That was a beautiful thing to bring up, honestly. But taxation is theft. Bottom of the barrel, bottom line, taxation is theft. So let's put that out there. Maybe we can get into that one again. But that's essentially what they're doing. They're stealing your livelihoods from you and pulling the rug under you, which, again, as we said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a wealthy country, a country that's economically stable, the way ours is and or was, to help other countries. Yet we're only seeing money being pumped and hand over fist being sent to other countries, while ours suffers in this very moment. We sit here and we suffer one-on-one, and we're being lied to on top of that.
Right. And part of the issue with that is that, as this documentary goes through, is that the dollar is no longer backed by gold or silver. So it is just strictly paper fiat currency, which is what allows it to balloon. That's not tethered to anything actually tangible, physical in the real world. So they're able to just, mark up all these numbers of interest and create this balloon that's bound to pop. And that it is a debt and death system. So every time you purchase anything, you're paying for it with your debt or your death.
Yikes. No kidding.
Is what it's bleeding from us. So if not to say that America or capitalism or the dollar itself is bad, but if we backtrack to the Federal Reserve and before that, and before our straw man and all of those things that we've been touching on a bit from other episodes, that it does boil down to your personal sovereignty and having, tangible, real assets, relationships, skills, the real world, that we're in this balloon of novelty and digital pretend artificiality, and that they're trying to lure us deeper and deeper into this imaginary world instead of us really centering ourselves on what is reality. So even we've touched on some of the Q stuff over previous casts, and they've even been having a parade of like walk of shame of Q people on on TV lately, interviewing all these Q people saying like, wow, I used to believe all this stuff, and now, like obviously because of the inauguration, like that means throw the baby out with the bathwater. Everything was false, and they're making them like reintegrate into society of like, yeah, this is the official, reality, even if it's so like, even with that cognitive dissonance, if you have to recondition yourself into something that doesn't make sense, like 2 + 2 = 5, and then you're accepted back into the normal society, is what's kind of happening. But and
you have to agree with it, regardless of how absurd and how illogical their common sense is. If you don't agree with it, you're obviously what they're throwing around now, a terrorist,
right,
and a white supremacist, whether you're white or not. Like it doesn't matter anymore. It's insane. This country's weird now.
Very weird.
Now here, that being said, are we weird because we're scared and because we're in denial? Because I do believe that has a lot to do with how the Twitter sphere and the social media is lashing out. Now, I'm once again banned from Facebook. So if you have me on Facebook and you're listening, hi. But that's my thing. Like it's all about attack and attack and attack. So it's oh, I don't like what you said, so let me either take it off, let me ridicule you, let me tell you how much I want your family to die of COVID, and or whatever the situation is.
Right.
Very ridiculous. So I think these people do these things because they don't like common sense. It's icky to them. It's something that doesn't make any sense to them. Common sense doesn't make any sense. Like, no, the news didn't tell me that, so why are you saying that, you liar? So
In a house of lies, the truth is offensive.
It's offensive. The truth is very, very offensive. And I don't know if that has to do with the fact that in order to understand the truth, you have to hold yourself accountable to it. And it's not that maybe it's not that easy. And maybe that slide, like a lot of those slides are still running through my head. The narcissism and the Facebook, they definitely go hand in hand. So, which again goes back to deniability. No, it can't be. My life is not. That's not going to happen to me in my life. Not me. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, and everything just fit in so perfectly today.
And there, and like you're saying this hypocrisy, and like with the AOC recently and the censorship that's been demanded as a result of it. So I don't know if you want to take that.
Yeah. Okay, we might as well. Okay, I was going to try to break these up into 2 episodes because it's a long one, but let's just keep it being a long one. Who cares?
Yeah.
Okay, so AOC, man, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, everybody should if you whatever news outlet you're watching, I do believe they should have it on every news outlet, but she made a 90-minute video, I believe it was Sunday night or Monday night. And this is her second or third one since the June 20th, June 6th insurrection.
The January 6th insurrection.
Somebody else called it that on TV recently. They're like, yeah, they stormed the Capitol. Somebody called it an erection. Oh, that thing was so funny. Okay, so anyway, so she made claims that she was at the Capitol, and I personally consider it just a flat out liar. I don't know if I can legally say that, but who cares at this point? Because I do believe whatever the case may be, she was being very manipulative. She was she explained that she was near death. She was at the Capitol and that she was scared for her life, that she had to hide in a bathroom, that she didn't trust the Capitol police that were there. She even quoted a police officer as to yelling, "Where is she? Where is she?" She was really detailed in her stories and in her acting them
out.
Like,
I was standing behind the door like this.
Yeah. she acted the entire thing out, which again, if you've really been in a traumatic experience, that's the last thing you're going to want to do unless somebody asks you to do it. And I know from personal experience that that's the case.
Right.
So, the fact that she was just out there putting it out there, displaying it, was already tell number one for me. Tell number two, right. Tell number two, she throughout these last couple of weeks, she has accused Ted Cruz of attempted murder and just calling people out. Every single person that was at the Capitol needs to be punished and basically black bagged and this and that, just going nuts. We need to make lists of everybody, fire this, resign here, do this. We brought up last week that Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy has asked for her to be disciplined or they will be taking action against her because of the things that she said. So anyway, back to her 90-minute Instagram video, which had many followers watching. Again, she claimed to have been at the Capitol. It came out last night that she wasn't at the actual Capitol building where the insurrection happened. She was in her office at the Cannon building, which was a few blocks away. She later put out a tweet calling that the news sources have misconstrued and manipulated her story by simply putting the truth out there that she wasn't at the actual Capitol. So they're the manipulative ones. You know what I mean? Now, for me, the most important part about this story is on top of all the other lies and all the other accusations, she brought up the fact that she was sexually assaulted and how this Capitol insurrection that she so traumatically went through that she did not actually go through brought back and triggered those moments of when she was sexually assaulted. Now, that one hit me hard because, there are women everywhere that have actually been assaulted. I'm not going to take anything away from her. If she was, I'm so sorry for that. It's unfortunately, it's not as uncommon as you would think, but at the same time, We also don't have a rape culture. I'm not going to walk outside and think that my next door neighbor who has a penis is going to rape me. Let's put it that way. Okay.
There's a lot of wolf criers, unfortunately.
Right. This isn't to call out all men and to be afraid of, I'm not a victim. And most women who have been put in situations like that do not consider themselves victim. So that was tale number 2 or 3. I don't know what number I'm on, but that was another one for me, is that she just blatantly just threw it up and it just put it out there. So one, it has nothing to do with the fact that she was at the Capitol. Maybe it did trigger certain things and this and that, but she wasn't there. So where and what did it trigger these emotions of I might get raped again, or I might get whatever situation she was in? She wasn't even there. So why bring it up? Because if you ask me, all she was doing was reopening old wounds of other real life assault victims. For what reason? But to play and manipulate our emotions. And that's not right. That pisses me off. I've always considered her a moron. She always likes to throw up words, and again, without consequence. She didn't think she was going to get fact checked on this.
Yeah, no.
She assumed the entire country was going to be right behind her. Why? Well, because she has 12.1 million followers who still sit there and say slay queen.
Right.
After telling that story and understanding that it was a lie. And people are posting things like, this is why women don't come out anymore, because everybody assumes that they're lying. She was lying.
Well.
The reason why women don't come out anymore is because women do things like that.
Right.
They
ruin it for the rest of us.
Over dramatize. That's not okay to do. And again, and that's my point. It's not to take away from real survivors. She's the one sucking the real emotion out of real survivors. Just the same way the words white supremacist and racist have all lost their meaning. What good is it doing us accusing everybody of this and that and the other thing, when there's real life people going through these situations that either one have to stay silent because they're just going to drown in the drama of everybody else's crap? How much attention did this girl need that she had to pull this move? And by the way, since she's been in her position in office, she hasn't done one damn thing.
Right.
She sits there and she squawks about the Green Deal. She hasn't done one actual legislative productive thing in office. You can look it up. Why is she there? To play on our emotions, to tell us we're oppressed, to tell us it's not fair. And in some instances, she's right. Whether it be because it's not fair because we're women, because we're Latina, because we're minority, whatever angle she's coming from.
Right.
And in some ways, she makes good points. But all Democrats do that. That's their job.
They walk the line. There's that double speak.
Right. It's that double speak thing. Exactly. So yeah, this AOC thing.
It's one thing if
it's sociopathic.
If she was, because anyone could get scared in a moment of like, if something pops out at you and you're like, oh, and you think that's bigger than the actual situation is. But she did a full detailed, thing on her Instagram of like, and they were, where is she? Like they were coming specifically for her. So like all those Trump people are a threat because they're targeting certain people like her. And then at the end of her stream, it was like, and it turned out it was the guard or, the Capitol Police. And so she like backtracked, but she still imprinted that on everybody that like people were hunting down these officials, right? With her being in the Cannon building. And then for her to give so much detail on it. And then instead of when she was challenged on it of, wait, but they had already evacuated all of the people in the Cannon building underground by 1:47, and it was after that you did your other live stream of they were like the boards on the windows were shaking and I could hear the hinges and stuff like that. Like, no, you weren't. You were down below. There's no way you could have. And they weren't even there at the time of that. By the time that happened, they were already evacuated. Right. So when she was caught on that lie, instead of being like, sorry guys, like I was so worked up that day, just like, I really feared for my life and blah, blah, blah. And like, but no, instead she like points the target at, she uses the momentum of this event and then aims at her enemies and says like, Ted Cruz, you attempted murder at me from that whole incident. And then they've also been able to challenge things like, again, saying, in response to people backlashing on her and commenting on her posts and saying, challenging her on it, she sent out her newsletter to all of her, huge following saying that if you find anybody speaking bad about me, basically to report it. to block it and all these things. So that way Twitter and Facebook can take down any post that's a criticism of me, whether it's true or not. Just that if it's critical of me, then my followers make sure that is silenced, and that big tech does its thing of, you know,
She sounds like such a brat.
censorship and
She's
yeah,
a brat.
it's all, yeah. So for her to that to be her reaction, instead of, you know, she had a chance to come clean and be like, whoa, that was a lot, and I got, you know, caught up in it. But yeah, it's clear that they're using this to target certain people regardless of what the actual threat of the event was. And we've discussed this before, how Trump's, you know, speech beforehand, he said, you know, peacefully protest and make your way to, you know, to the Capitol. And it's been pointed out now that they were, I think, 1.8 miles from, or they were about 1.8 miles from the Capitol building where Trump spoke, and the at 11:11, and I think at 1:12 or something, or like a minute later, that they were climbing the fence over at the Capitol. Right. So the majority of people who were there in person listening to Trump speak weren't there at the initial surge onto the Capitol. It would have taken them at least a minute, even if you were the fastest person in the world, to run that distance and join in. So they had this set and ready to, like, all right, now cue you, and now cue you. And it was because of that. So
right. And whatever the case may be, they do have evidence of the cops opening the gates, opening doors, taking selfies with people that were involved in the insurrection at the Capitol building. So, you know, who knows exactly how planned it was, who planned it. It was well calculated, I can tell you that much.
Right.
You know, so it's
and it could be a lot of cooks in the kitchen too. It could have been that there was a legitimate, like, that it's just a protest, and then all these different groups of people decided, oh, here's how I'm going to play into it, like a little Ocean's 11, you know, type of event. But it's evident of what the purpose of that, from how they're responding to it, making blacklists, making, you know, this huge push for censorship.
Right. This is literally a First Amendment issue, and it doesn't be taken seriously because nobody considers tech speak as free speech, because it's on screen. It's something that we can physically see, not something we physically say out loud. I don't think that a lot of people are either unfamiliar with how the First Amendment actually works, and or again, it's not affecting me because I'm not being reported. So I don't care, or you know what I mean. Americans as a whole, we have this idea that if it's not affecting us personally, we're going to be okay. You know, and that can go back to even COVID. Now people are yelling at me who weren't yelling at me six months ago because they either know somebody or lost a relative after getting COVID symptoms. It's not funny, it's real. Like, no, well, one, no, nobody said it wasn't, and two, well, what changed your mind? Oh, because it affected you this time. You know what I mean? It's not that it hasn't affected me on a personal level. You know, I have a big family. We have members who have had it and have survived it. I myself am one. You know, so it's not, nobody's sitting there saying it's not real. What we are sitting there saying is, watch out and keep your eyes open for the things that they're taking away from you in the name of this pandemic that is going on. It's basically all just watch out, keep your eyes open. You know, just. And the same thing goes back to this AOC thing. This is a stunt. This was shtick. This had nothing to do with taking this insurrection at the Capitol seriously, and making sure that people who are involved are brought to justice. It has nothing to do with that. This was a shtick. This was a stunt pulled to basically silence anybody who sits there and wants to call her out on it. She was so confident she wasn't going to get fact checked. That's what blows me away.
The gravitas of these folk that think that they can just say and do whatever. Like, that's inciting to, like, literally send your followers out on a task of censorship. But
that is exactly.
There's this great quote from Martin Niemöller, I think is his name, but he was part of, I believe, the Nazi state, and he has a quote, first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionist, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And so that's the position that we're finding ourselves in now, that it may seem like, oh, it's just those pro-Trumpers. It's just those, anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers that they're coming for. But it's a lockstep, and then you're going to find yourself at the end of the line. And not only are you going to be at the end of the line where there's no one left to speak for you, but you have to deal with that karma and that like guilt of having basically sold out everyone before you.
Right. Here's a real cheap, quick example. Sia, she's a singer. She's a singer with the no face thing.
Right.
So she made a movie recently, and in her movie, she was criticized because she didn't have enough minority or ethnic people in her movie, and it was the leads were all white. Well, the lead characters are a family. You know what I mean? So they were an entire family. So how they were supposed to incorporate people from other races in a family that, I guess in the story, happens to be a white family, was a big deal to a lot of people. Like, you're not safe. That's basically the point, is eventually that criticism and the idea of eventually you're going to have your own foot in your mouth is where we're coming from here. Yes, they're targeting people who are speaking out right now, but eventually that's going to trickle down to you, to us. I mean, we already see it in celebrities here and there and the other. And they're not the only ones that are being targeted. If anything, I think they're warning signs and omens and examples of what they're telling you not to be and what not to do. No free thinking, America. That ship has sailed. That should tell us something. It should tell us that we should be more aware that, maybe you don't have any, and this isn't to be insulting, but maybe you don't have any thoughts. Maybe you can care less about politics. Maybe you can care less about what's going on. You just want to live your life. That's fine. But the pursuit of happiness in America is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. How does it make any sense to us to be able to sit here in the United States of America and say we still believe in the pursuit of happiness when they've taken it away from us? In 1 year, they took it away from us. So many people are on unemployment. That is the entire goal of being in America. The American dream is to work for a better life. The pursuit of happiness. Nobody sees it that way, though. We see it as something that, oh, this is just temporary. It's temporary. Yes, it's temporary, but it's not going to go that way. It's not going to go backwards. It's going to go forward. And in that name, they're calling that progress. They call that progressiveness. And going forward and being progressive. Yeah, I guess they are the same thing. But where are we going? If you ask me, we're headed right for the trains and headed right for the FEMA camps. And the only ones talking about it are the crazy ones. And they're being silenced. And not because we're the ones inciting violence. I didn't call Ted Cruz an attempted murderer. I didn't call AOC an attempted murderer. I called her a lying moron. But I'm not telling anybody to hurt her. She's actually gone out and we must get these people. And they have, what do you mean get these people?
Track them
what
down.
People?
Undesirables.
I'm an American just like she is. So what people?
Right.
The people who disagree with you? The people who call you out on your bullshit? Ladies and gentlemen, this is way more serious than we're taking it. Mm-hmm. These petty little instances of hypocrisy are building up, and the more and more people see it, either the more the bubble will burst. I don't even know if I don't know if I'm looking forward to something like that happening. I do know that this idea of the Great Awakening is happening at the same time as this Great Reset, which is wonderful news. We still have a lot of good people on our side that do believe in a true natural way of being a community without being a communist. So I do see light at the end of the tunnel, but I also see trains.
I think that the tricky part is that I think a lot of people think that when it gets bad enough, then we'll stand up. Like once it's evident that we have a Mussolini or Hitler on our hands, then America will stand up. But if they keep like kind of placating us like this, where it's just a little bit off and it's not quite what we wanted, we're able to get so far down the road where like if it was, a fascist that fascism at step one, then we would have been like, no, thank you. Right. America does not want to go that way. But each generation has their own battle to fight, and we win or lose it. So people could say that when we had the New Deal and the Federal Reserve and the straw man were first created, that was its own version of revelations of, their own accepting of the beast in a sense, and that storyline keeps repeating each generation, and we each have our own chance to take it or not. And so our next one now is the mandatory vaccine, and it's not necessarily even an issue. Maybe you don't believe in like that there's chemicals or nanotechnology in it, or that it's going to have an harmful impact on your health. Maybe you don't believe all that, but even just the necessity of it being mandatory or having certain things restricted from you without it is another like threshold of a new revelations that our children are going to have to live in that paradigm, that unless they have a certain requirement, they can't have basic human rights and essentials. And so each generation is going to be challenged of, like we think that once our food and water and oxygen is like our basic survival things, our shelter, once those things are compromised and taken from us, then we'll speak up. But it's not. Like, we're literally being suffocated. Our water is poisoned with fluoride. Like, some places, like, you can light a lighter under your faucet and like it combusts, because there's so much
oh my God
gunk in it. Like, we have the chemtrails that are like visible in the sky and still in denial of it. Like, you can test air and water of like pristine places like Mount Shasta and stuff, and there's like evidence of these chemicals in the water and in the plants simply because it's come down from the air. So even organic farms and stuff have been tampered with and are toxic now. So it's like, how much oppression do we have to have before it actually like jars us to like snap out of it? They're doing it in such a boiling the frog, like deadening kind of way. That's why it's Agenda 2030. Like, we're so close and we're not there yet. And I think that almost the closer that we get to it, because it seems like we've jumped, like scaled like huge steps just in the past 10 years, but this next 10 years is going to be very like slow, but it's because we're so close to the finish line that like it's just barely over the tipping point at this point. And so I think that that's the challenge that we're facing again, is that like people want to snap out of it and we can't. We're so numbed to our comforts of right now, and it's just like a little bit off. It's just a little sacrifice. I just have to like wear the mask in the store. I just have to like wear my mask in between bites, but at least I can sit at the restaurant now, At least I have my cell phone, even though they're tracking me now, but at least I can still call everybody and go on my Facebook and stuff like that. Like, they're relying on us needing these comforts so that we won't snap out of it. And until something like tings in us that we realize like what's real and what's not, and we stop leaning on this false reality that we are believing is gonna, they say the only things you cannot hide forever are the sun, the moon, and the truth. And we're relating to this paradigm of America and the world as if it's the sun, as if it's going to rise tomorrow, no matter what, that we can just rely on that. And it's not the sun.
Right. Well said. Beautifully said. I think with that, I want to wrap it up.
Yeah.
And then next episode, we're going to bring you some more Biden updates on executive orders that he signed. And the potential, we did bring it up a little bit. We touched on it, and other news on the Newsom update, some interesting stuff on Hunter Biden. That's going to be a lot shorter episode, but I'm so happy that we did this one. I don't want to make it too much longer because I feel like the longer we go, you know what I mean.
We might lose.
So, Ms. Khalil, as always, thank you so much for all your hard work. You do such an amazing job each and every episode.
Thank you so much.
I couldn't have asked for a better, wonderful co-host. Please like, share, and subscribe these videos, ladies and gentlemen. Comment. I think if you comment and give us some feedback, we'd like that too. Thumbs down, guy. Keep it up. Keep it up. Thumbs down, guy. We like you too.
Challenge us.
And yeah, with that, patreon.com/offthemarkcast. And where else are we besides YouTube?
We also have our link tree. So we're testing out different social media platforms, seeing who makes the cut. So you can see who we select on our link tree /Off the Mark Cast.
Can I give you this rose?
This week's rose goes to.
Right, exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much again. Thank you guys for sticking with us. It was a longer episode, but probably one of our better ones, if you ask me. You gave me chills so many times over and over. The way you
It's big
explained
topic.
emotion was
Same.
perfect.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And as always, stay focused, stay vigilant, and keep the peace, ladies and gentlemen. Bye.
Bye.